Hi, I'm J Sokol, and I'm going to be reading from Run J Run, published by Renaissance Press in 2019. I've chosen a chapter that's a bit far into the book because it's a pretty hopeful section, and I'd like to celebrate hope and resilience. A little warning that there is some sexual content in this chapter and also reference to self-harm. I was down on my knees in my good tan slacks, beside the screened-off table I'd reserved at the back of the Japanese restaurant. Zach and Annie sat, menus untouched, listening to the speech I prepared. In my right hand, I held two rings, one small and slim, the other larger and thicker, but still smaller than the one in my right pocket, the one I'd wear if they agreed. What I'm proposing, I know it's non-traditional, but we can make it work. I love you both, and Kira already sees you as family. I moved to the conclusion. So I hope you'll accept my proposal of marriage. Annie held the red rose I'd given her, twin to the one Zach was twirling in his left hand. Zach's expression betrayed no emotion other than very careful attention. He turned to Annie. Her cheeks were flushed, perhaps from the sake. A few weeks ago, when I'd come clean with her about my promise to Zach, she'd gone very pale. She'd asked me the same question Dr. McQueen had. Why? I gave her the same answer, that Zach had begged me. Annie's pale cheeks had darkened with anger. She asked me a second question, one Dr. McQueen had not. And do you intend to keep your promise? I was confused for a moment. Did she mean my promise to her to look after Zach, or my promise to him not to interfere if he tried to kill himself? It occurred to me the ambiguity was intentional. I wanted to tell her I didn't know, welcoming the anger and contempt I deserved. But I knew what lay behind the anger, the same desperation I felt. So I looked Annie in the eye and said, I intend to keep all my promises. Would Annie understand this proposal was part of how I meant to do that? She looked to Zach for direction, and he smiled, continuing to twirl the rose I'd given him. I knew that smile, knew therefore I might be on my knees for a while yet. You look handsome, Jeremy, Zach said. Nice shirt. But how come no tie? You don't think the occasion called for a tie? I don't like ties. They're too constricting. But would you like me to find a tie? Nah, it's sexy. Very manly the way your chest hair pokes out from your shirt. He reached out to stroke my chest. Don't you think so, Annie? I agree. It's very sexy, she said, her smile now matching his. Do you want to touch it too, he asked. Well, if Jeremy doesn't mind. He's proposed marriage to us. I think he's going to have to deal with it. I concentrated on not blushing. I'll wait till we've evaluated his proposal, Annie said, clearly enjoying herself. Yes, his proposal. Listen, Jay, I've got some bad news for you. My heart sank. What? This idea you have? You know polygamy is still illegal in this state. Like you give a fuck, I retorted. Zach rewarded me with a huge grin. Tell you what, Annie and I need to evaluate your proposal, as she put it. Why don't you freshen up in the men's room? For how long, I asked. Well, this is a serious discussion. It's not every day a girl or a boy or both get a proposal for marriage. Let's say 15 minutes. Okay then, 15 minutes. I'll give you 15 minutes. Smoothing my pants, I stood and walked towards the bathroom in a way I hoped was dignified. In the men's room, I gazed at my reflection, turning my head from side to side. I'd gotten a haircut and a beard trim. I usually went to the barber, but this time had tried a fashionable salon. The haircut was intended to be stylishly asymmetrical, but to me it just seemed lopsided. The beard looked good, though, something between scholar and lumberjack. I washed my face at the fancy sink, the hot and cold water flowing through an elegant trench, and used one of the dark green towels stacked neatly in the bamboo holder. I checked my cell phone. 3 minutes had passed. Concentrate on now, I told myself. Since my appointment with Dr. McQueen, I'd been working on living in the present. Zach, meanwhile, was being weaned off the old drugs. Dr. McQueen had changed her primary diagnosis, a decision I wholly agreed with. I'd always believed Zach's manic tendencies were more a natural part of his energetic personality than evidence of a mood disorder. Leaning over the sink, I examined my right eye carefully. The last of my injuries to heal, the bruise had faded to yellow. In the days following the subway incident, Zach had agonized over the beating he'd given me. I resisted the urge to tell him not to worry about it. Instead, I thought about how I'd feel in his place and let him take care of me. That seemed to help him, and as for me, I enjoyed his attentions. I'd forgotten what a good caregiver Zach was. He iced my swollen eye and lip, cooked me large, healthy meals, massaged my sore muscles. The nights were tender and electrifying. Though there was still no sex, each day brought us closer. One night we faced each other in bed, not quite touching, Zach's soft breath on my face, the heat of his body inches from mine. He leaned forward and kissed my throat as my heart beat rapidly in my chest. Another night, he rubbed his thigh against mine for long, luscious moments as a sweet ache blossomed low in my stomach. In the past, I might have found this frustrating, but I concentrated on living inside the pleasure of each unique now, treating it not as building towards a future act, but as a moment full and complete in itself. 7 minutes to go. I tried to pee, but my daydreams made that difficult. I thought about Zach's fingers stroking my chest before, and Annie's following suit, which didn't actually happen. I wondered if Annie was as horny as I was. We took turns going to bed early with Zach, the other waiting in the living room until the household was asleep. As far as I knew, she wasn't getting any real sex either. I followed that thought to an obvious solution, then faltered. My mind wandered finally to last night. Zach had taken me in his arms, stretching the full length of his body against mine. His hand moved up and down on my hip in a lazy, arrhythmic motion. I slid my hand down his back to cup his ass. He kissed me long and deeply, and I floated in an ecstasy of pleasure and longing. These weeks had been restful, healing, but tomorrow Zach began a new regimen of therapy and medication. Time was moving forward, and living in the moment was not the same thing as failing to act. I gave up on peeing, zipped my trousers, and returned to the elegant sink. Checking my phone, I saw that exactly 15 minutes had passed. I exited the bathroom. Back at our table, there was no sign of Zach. The roses I'd given each of them were gone as well. Where? Zach had to go somewhere, but come sit. There's avocado sushi, edamame too. I stood where I was, appetite gone. Annie began to speak again, then smiled at something behind me. I turned, and there was Zach, a swirl of red and green rotating before him. He was juggling red roses. Thank you. Run, J. Run.